Hi everyone, Dr. Tochi here. There's a point I'd like to drive home. No pun intended. You can see I'm driving. About the role of the spiritual practitioner. And let me start out with what it's not. Your spiritual practitioner is not a therapist. Your spiritual practitioner is not your therapist. And I hope you're getting that. Your spiritual practitioner is not your therapist. I know that when you go for a divination, you're going to talk about your problems and you want to discuss your problems and you want someone to lend you an ear, a listening ear. And that's okay. But when you go to your spiritual practitioner and you start asking them for their opinion, for them to tell you what to do outside of the divination, you're no longer getting a divination, you're getting a personal opinion. And sometimes spiritual practitioners will make that mistake. Okay? They don't know where to draw the line between the divination and their personal opinion. Your spiritual practitioner is not your counselor. Okay? And I think I've put out a post on my YouTube community page about this, and I've done some YouTube classes on this as well. You want to be counseled by somebody who has counseling tools, not someone who's just talking off the top of their head. Okay? Because it is very difficult for someone who has not experienced your situation or doesn't have the same kind of background as you do to give you adequate counsel. It is hard for someone who is not of the same culture or doesn't understand your culture intimately to counsel you. And the same thing even applies with therapy. You can't be going to get therapy from someone who doesn't have therapy tools. The tool for therapy, or the tools, plural, for therapy. Stop forcing your spiritual practitioner to be your therapist or your counselor. And when that happens with me, I am not a therapist. Okay? And so I push back, and I understand some of my clients, some of my students don't like that. They trust my opinion, they trust my judgment, they trust my wisdom, and they want me to speak to their situation. However, if I have not experienced your situation, if I'm not familiar with your situation, especially if it has religious or cultural undertones, I cannot authoritatively speak to it. And I don't feel comfortable speaking to it. And I know people don't want to hear that. They want me to come in and say, do this and do this and do that. I teach you how to take responsibility for yourself and how to make mistakes. But part of the process of developing yourself as a human being, especially spiritually, is making mistakes. You make a mistake, you realize you're moving in the wrong direction, you correct, and you start moving in the right direction. This happens with airplanes and with ships. When you think that airplane you're in is always moving in a straight line, it's not. They make micro corrections, and they keep making micro corrections until they get to the destination. And that's a metaphor for what goes on with us in our lives, too. We make mistakes, and then we start making micro corrections until we get to our destination. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, correct immediately. Don't sit there and wallow in it and cry and look for a pity party and people to join your pity party. If you've made a mistake, correct and move in the correct direction. That's what you got to do. But don't force people, especially spiritual practitioners, don't force them to be your counselors. Don't force them to be your therapists. They're not trained for that. Unless that spiritual practitioner tells you definitively that they're certified, they're licensed to be a counselor or a therapist, then let them do what they need to do. And I put out a YouTube video some months ago about the difference between a therapist, a counselor, a practitioner. And if you need to watch that class on YouTube, please go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Tochi, and watch that, because it was a comprehensive class. Okay, talking about that. So I'm not going to try and do that in this little itty bitty video here. There are spiritual practitioners who don't know what's best for you, frankly. And the fact that the person has a large following or is respected or, venerated or whatever the word is for it, okay, doesn't mean that they can address your situation adequately or appropriately. And a lot of us need to understand that. Being a spiritual practitioner doesn't automatically make you a therapist. It doesn't automatically make you a counselor of any kind. It doesn't automatically make you a guru of all life issues. So if you're one of those people that you go for a divination and then you're trying to change or transform that divination session into a therapy session, I encourage you to stop that. Stop. You're not doing well by yourself, and you're not doing well by your spiritual practitioner, and you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're setting your spiritual practitioner up for failure as well. Just stop. Stop forcing your spiritual practitioner to be what they are not, when what they're not qualified, licensed, or certified to be. And another quick one before I go. Stop forcing your spiritual practitioner to be a medical doctor or a healer. Not all spiritual practitioners are called to healing. Okay? And if the person was not called to healing, you have no business forcing that person to give you medical advice, health advice. And there are many spiritual practitioners who set themselves up to be providing unauthorized, unsubstantiated health advice or medical advice. Okay? I was at a workshop several weeks ago where someone who was a yoga teacher was like, oh, do I have a few minutes? Let me teach you all. And it wasn't even her gathering. It wasn't even her group. She wasn't even a facilitator. She was asked to introduce herself. And in the process of introducing herself, she said, oh, do y'all mind if I take a couple of minutes and show y'all 2 breathing techniques that can help relieve stress? The facilitator said yes, and it became her taking over the group. Oh, do this breathing exercise and it heals diabetes, it heals cancer, it heals, and she started listing all kinds of diseases that some breathing exercise does. Yoga teacher. And she had just told us that she had picked up yoga like in less than a year. She came to that place and learned some yoga things and was trying to now put it to us that if we did the breathing exercises she was teaching us, we will be healed of 1,001 diseases. So this is something that we need to stop doing. We need to stop putting things out there as authoritative truth when that's not the case. Let those who are trained and experienced in what they do what they do best. Okay? I hope you find that helpful. My website is at tochi.us or drtochi.com.